The starship Aurora drifted silently through the vast expanse of space, its sleek metallic frame glinting faintly under the light of a distant sun. Humanity's first interstellar expedition had been years in the making, and Captain Elias Drake stood on the bridge, staring out at the endless void. His crew was tired but hopeful. This uncharted region of the galaxy held untold mysteries, and they were determined to uncover them. "Captain," called Lieutenant Maravos from her station, breaking the quiet hum of the ship, "we've detected an anomaly ahead. It's unusual." Elias turned sharply, his sharp features illuminated by the soft glow of the control panels. "Define unusual," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "It's a planet shrouded in some kind of bioluminescent cloud. The readings are off the charts, energy signatures we've never seen before." Mara hesitated for a moment before adding, "It could be dangerous." Elias didn't hesitate. "Danger is part of exploration," he replied firmly. "Prepare a landing party. We're going down there." Minutes later, Elias led a small team into the planet's atmosphere. Their shuttle descended through thick layers of glowing mist, casting eerie shadows across their faces. As they broke through the clouds, they found themselves hovering over a breathtaking landscape, a world of towering crystalline trees, shimmering rivers, and ruins that hinted at an ancient civilization long gone. "This place, it's beautiful," whispered Dr. Lena Cruz, the team's xenobiologist, her eyes wide with wonder. But beauty often masked danger. As soon as the shuttle touched down, the ground beneath them trembled. Suddenly, translucent shapes materialized out of thin air, energy constructs resembling humanoid figures, their forms pulsating with electric blue light. The constructs moved swiftly, surrounding the humans with an almost predatory grace. "Stay calm," Elias ordered, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "We mean no harm." His words seemed to have no effect. The constructs advanced, their glowing eyes fixed on the intruders. Just as one raised what appeared to be a weapon-like appendage, a commanding voice echoed across the clearing. "Enough." All eyes turned toward the source of the voice. Emerging from behind a cluster of crystalline trees was a figure unlike anything they'd ever seen. She was tall and regal, her skin shimmering like polished quartz. Her hair cascaded down her back in waves of silver light, and her piercing violet eyes radiated both authority and sorrow. "Who dares disturb my world?" she demanded, her tone firm yet tinged with curiosity. "I am Captain Elias Drake of Earth," Elias replied, stepping forward cautiously. "We come in peace, seeking knowledge and understanding." The alien woman studied him for a long moment, then raised a hand. Instantly, the constructs lowered their weapons and dissolved into the air. "I am Lizera, last heir of the Syntherian Empire," she said finally. "You may stay for now. But know this, I do not trust easily." Her gaze lingered on Elias, as if searching for something hidden within him. He met her stare without flinching, sensing that this meeting would change everything, for better or worse. As the team followed Lizera deeper into the ruins, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't just exploring a new world. They were stepping into a story far greater than themselves, one that might test their courage, loyalty, and humanity itself. The ruins of the ancient Syntherian city stretched endlessly before them, their crystalline structures glowing faintly in the dim light of the twin suns. Lizera walked ahead with an air of quiet confidence, her every step deliberate and measured. Captain Elias Drake followed closely behind, his sharp eyes scanning the surroundings for any signs of danger. The rest of the team trailed further back, whispering amongst themselves about the alien princess who had so suddenly appeared to save, or judge, them. Lizera stopped near a massive archway adorned with intricate carvings that seemed to pulse faintly with energy. She turned to face Elias, her violet eyes meeting his with an intensity that made him feel both exposed and understood. "You claim you seek knowledge," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Yet your kind has always sought conquest first." Elias hesitated, unsure how much she knew about humanity's history. "We're not all the same," he replied carefully. "Some of us still believe in exploration without destruction." Lizera tilted her head slightly, studying him as if trying to decipher whether he spoke truth or lies. After a moment, she gestured toward the ruins. "This was once my people's capital, a beacon of peace and prosperity, until outsiders came, seeking power instead of understanding." Her tone grew colder, tinged with grief. "They took everything from me." Elias felt a pang of guilt despite knowing he wasn't responsible for her pain. "I'm sorry for what happened to your people," he said sincerely. "But I swear to you, we didn't come here looking for conflict." For the first time since they'd met, Lizera's expression softened. "Perhaps," she murmured, "or perhaps you are simply better at hiding your intentions than others." Over the next few days, Lizera allowed the humans to explore the ruins under her watchful eye. She spent most of her time speaking with Elias, sharing fragments of her past and asking questions about Earth. At first, their conversations were formal and guarded, but gradually, a bond began to form between them. Elias found himself drawn to her strength and resilience, while Lizera seemed intrigued by his compassion and determination. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the ruins in hues of gold and purple, Elias sat beside Lizera on a crumbling stone bench. The air was cool, and the silence between them was comfortable rather than awkward. "You seem different from the others," Lizera said after a long pause. "Why is that?" Elias chuckled softly. "Different how?" "Less afraid of me," she admitted. "Most would cower before someone like me. But you look at me as if I'm just another person." "That's because you are," Elias replied simply. "You've lost your people, sure, but you're still standing. Still fighting. That takes courage." Lizera looked away, her shimmering skin reflecting the fading sunlight. For a moment, she seemed almost vulnerable, a stark contrast to the regal figure she usually presented. "Courage doesn't erase loneliness," she whispered. Her words struck a chord deep within Elias. He had left Earth knowing full well he might never return, trading personal connections for the sake of duty. Yet here he was, connecting with someone from another world in ways he hadn't expected. Back at the campsite, tensions simmered among the crew. Lieutenant Maravos paced restlessly, glaring at Elias whenever he returned from his talks with Lizera. "He's spending too much time with her," she muttered to Dr. Cruz. "What if she's manipulating him? We can't afford distractions." Dr. Cruz shrugged, though concern flickered in her eyes. "Manipulation or not, it's clear there's something between them. Something powerful." As the days passed, Elias realized he couldn't ignore the growing connection with Lizera, or the weight of his responsibilities to his crew. But one thing became increasingly clear: leaving this alien princess behind wouldn't be as simple as he once thought. The aftermath of the battle was a somber affair. The ruins, once glowing with vibrant energy, now stood as silent witnesses to the devastation wrought by Kael'Vorthan's greed. Captain Elias Drake sat beside Lizera, under the pale light of the twin suns, her strength slowly returning, but her spirit burdened by the weight of loss and survival. The crew worked tirelessly around them, repairing equipment and tending to injuries, but the air was heavy with unspoken questions about what would happen next. Lizera turned to Elias, her violet eyes searching his face. "You've done more for me than anyone ever has," she said softly. "But now, I must ask you one last time." Her voice faltered slightly, as if dreading the answer. "Will you leave me human?" Elias hesitated, his heart torn between duty and emotion. He had always known this moment would come, the inevitable pull of his obligations to Earth versus the connection he'd forged with Lizera. But as he looked into her eyes, so full of hope and fear, something shifted within him. This wasn't just about leaving or staying. It was about choosing where he belonged. "I won't leave you, not completely," he replied, surprising even himself with the conviction in his voice. "I'll return to Earth to report our findings, to bring back help for your world. But after that," he paused, taking her hand gently in his, "after that, I'll come back to you. To stay. Tears welled up in Lizara's eyes, shimmering like starlight against her crystalline skin. You mean it, she whispered, her voice trembling. You'd give up your home. For me. Elias nodded firmly. You've shown me what true courage looks like, Lizara, and I can't walk away from someone who's become my purpose. He smiled faintly. Besides, humanity needs allies out here among the stars, and maybe we can start building that bridge together. Lizara's expression softened, gratitude and love shining through her features. She reached into a pouch at her side and pulled out a small shard of the Lumina core, its glow steady and warm. Take this, she said, pressing it into his palm. It's a piece of my world, and my promise to wait for you. Elias closed his fingers around the fragment, feeling its warmth seep into his skin. I'll hold you to that, he said with a grin. As preparations began for their departure, tensions lingered among the crew. Lieutenant Mara Voss approached Elias cautiously, guilt etched across her face. Captain, I'm sorry, she stammered. For everything. Elias regarded her silently for a moment before nodding. We all make mistakes, Voss. What matters is how we fix them. Help me get these supplies ready, and let's focus on getting home safely. With the Aurora repaired and loaded with data about the Syntherian civilization and the Lumina core, the crew prepared to leave. As the shuttle lifted off, Elias gazed down at the glowing planet below. Lizara standing alone amidst the ruins, her silver hair catching the sunlight. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of peace, a future worth fighting for. Weeks later, as the Aurora re-entered Earth's orbit, Elias held the Lumina shard close, its light a constant reminder of his promise. Humanity awaited news of their discovery, but Elias already knew what came next. He would return to Lizara, not as an explorer or a soldier, but as someone who had found a new home among the stars. And perhaps in time, humanity and the Syntherians could forge a bond stronger than either had imagined, a partnership built on trust, sacrifice, and the shared dream of a brighter future. The atmosphere on the alien planet had shifted overnight. What was once a fragile peace between humanity and Lizara now felt like a delicate thread, ready to snap at any moment. Captain Elias Drake tried to focus on his duties, but Lizara's question lingered in his mind like an unshakable shadow. Will you leave me, human? The words haunted him, forcing him to confront feelings he wasn't prepared to face. Meanwhile, tensions among the crew reached a boiling point. Lieutenant Mara Voss paced furiously near the edge of the campsite, her sharp features illuminated by the glow of their portable lights. She glanced toward Elias's tent, her lips pressed into a thin line. This is madness, she muttered under her breath. We're wasting time here while that alien distracts him. Dr. Lena Cruz overheard her and frowned. Elias isn't being distracted. He's building trust. Do you really think Lizara would have let us stay if he hadn't connected with her? Mara shot her a cold glare. Trust, is that what you call it? Or is it something else? Her voice dropped to a whisper, though her tone remained venomous. He's getting too close to her, too emotionally involved. And we all know what happens when emotions cloud judgment. Cruz opened her mouth to argue, but Mara cut her off. Mark my words. If we don't act soon, this entire mission will fall apart. We didn't come here for some fairy tale romance with an alien princess. We came for answers. Unbeknownst to the others, Mara had already made up her mind. Late that night, after everyone else had retired to their tents, she slipped away from the campsite. Using a secure communication device hidden in her gear, she transmitted a signal into deep space. It didn't take long for a response to come through. A faint crackle followed by a gruff, menacing voice. Lieutenant Voss, the voice growled. You've found the princess. Mara swallowed hard but stood her ground. Yes, she's alive, and she's here. I can give you her location, but only if you guarantee Earth's safety in return. There was a pause on the other end before the voice replied. Very well. You'll get your reward. But remember, no mistakes. As dawn broke over the alien landscape, the Aurora sensors detected multiple ships entering orbit above the planet. Alarms blared across the campsite, jolting everyone awake. Elias sprinted out of his tent, his heart pounding as he scanned the skies. "What's happening?" he demanded, turning to the nearest crew member. "It's a fleet," Dr. Kruz stammered, pointing upward. "They're not ours." Lizera appeared moments later, her usually calm demeanor replaced with panic. "No," she whispered, her violet eyes wide with terror. "It's him. He's found me." Elias turned to her, his mind racing. Who's coming?" "The warlord who destroyed my people," she said, her voice trembling. "Kal Vorthan. He wants the Lumina core, the energy source powering this planet. If he gets it, nothing will stop him." Before Elias could respond, Mara stepped forward, her expression triumphant yet guilty. "I did what I had to do," she declared, meeting his furious gaze. "Earth comes first, Elias. Always." Lizera stared at Mara, then at Elias. Betrayal itched across her shimmering face. "So this is how it ends," she said bitterly. "You humans are all the same." Without another word, she raised her hands, and the ground beneath them began to tremble. A brilliant pulse of light erupted from the ruins, radiating outward in waves. The energy disabled the enemy fleet temporarily but drained Lizera visibly. She collapsed to her knees, her body flickering faintly like a dying star. Elias rushed to her side, ignoring Mara's protests. "Lizera," he shouted, cradling her in his arms. "Why did you do that? You didn't have to sacrifice yourself." Her voice was weak but resolute. "Because I refused to let him win. Not again." As the dust settled and the enemy ships regrouped, Elias realized one thing. Lizera had trusted him, and he had failed her, or so she believed. Now, more than ever, the stakes were higher. They had to fight back, not just for survival, but for redemption. The air was thick with tension as the crew scrambled to regroup after Lizera's desperate act. The Lumina Core's energy pulse had temporarily disabled Kal Vorthan's fleet, but it was only a matter of time before the warlord's ships recovered and launched another assault. Captain Elias Drake knelt beside Lizera, her glowing form dimmed and fragile in his arms. Her breaths were shallow, her crystalline skin flickering like a dying flame. "Lizera," Elias said urgently, his voice trembling with emotion. "You can't give up now. We need you." Her violet eyes fluttered open, meeting his with a mixture of pain and resolve. "I've done what I could," she whispered weakly. "But this fight, it's yours now." Elias clenched his jaw, anger and guilt surging through him. He glanced back at Lieutenant Mara Voss, who stood frozen nearby, her betrayal written across her face. For a moment, he wanted to lash out, to demand answers, to make her pay for what she'd done. But there was no time for that. Every second counted. "We're not losing you," Elias declared firmly, helping Lizera to her feet despite her protests. "We'll protect you and your world, no matter what it takes." Dr. Lina Cruz hurried over, carrying a portable scanner. "Captain, we need to stabilize her. That energy surge must have drained her life force." Lizera shook her head faintly, leaning on Elias for support. "There's no time. You must prepare for the next attack. Use the ruins. They hold secrets even I haven't uncovered yet." Her words sparked an idea in Elias's mind. Turning to the crew, he barked orders with renewed determination. "Cruz, gather whatever tech we can salvage from the ruins. We'll rig traps using the Lumina Core's residual energy. Voss," he added sharply, glaring at the lieutenant, "you're going to fix this mess. Help us defend this planet, or so help me, I'll leave you behind when we evacuate." Mara flinched but nodded reluctantly, shame flickering in her eyes. She knew she'd crossed a line, but survival instincts kicked in. If they were going to stand a chance against Vorthan, every hand would be needed. As the crew worked frantically, Elias stayed by Lizara's side, guiding her deeper into the ruins. They reached a hidden chamber illuminated by pulsating crystals embedded in the walls. In the center stood a pedestal holding a fragment of the Lumina core, a smaller, more stable version of the massive energy source that powered the planet. "This is our last hope," Lizara murmured, touching the fragment reverently. "If used wisely, it can disable Vorthin's fleet permanently, but activating it comes at a cost." Elias frowned. What kind of cost? "It requires a connection, a bond strong enough to channel its power without destroying the user," she explained softly. "And I'm too weak now to do it alone." Realization dawned on Elias. "You want me to help you?" She nodded, her gaze locking onto his. "Only someone who truly cares about this world, and about me, can share the burden. Do you trust me, Elias?" For a moment, doubt crept into his mind. This wasn't just about risking his life. It was about placing his faith in an alien princess he barely understood. Yet, looking into her eyes, he saw something undeniable: courage, resilience, and a deep longing for redemption, not just for herself, but for everyone who had suffered because of Vorthin. "I trust you," he said finally, his voice steady. "Let's finish this together." As they prepared to activate the fragment, the ground shook violently. The enemy fleet was regrouping. Explosions erupted in the distance as Vorthin's forces began their descent. Time was running out. Back outside, the crew set up makeshift defenses, using debris from the ruins and repurposed equipment to create barriers. Dr. Crows rigged explosives, while even Mera contributed by manning one of the plasma cannons. Despite their differences, they fought as one unit, united by the knowledge that failure meant annihilation. Inside the chamber, Elias placed his hands on the Lumina fragment alongside Lizara. A surge of energy coursed through them both, binding them together in a dazzling display of light. As the power grew, Elias felt a strange warmth, a sense of unity with Lizara and the planet itself. Outside, Vorthin's forces closed in, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. The final battle was about to begin, and Elias knew they wouldn't get a second chance. The days on the alien planet passed in a blur of discovery and tension. Captain Elias Drake found himself torn between two worlds: his duty to humanity and the growing bond he shared with Lizara, the enigmatic princess of the Syntherians. Each conversation they had deepened his understanding of her pain, her strength, and the loneliness that haunted her every move. Yet, as their connection grew stronger, so did the unease among his crew. One evening, as the twin suns painted the sky in shades of crimson and gold, Elias and Lizara stood atop a hill overlooking the glowing ruins of her once magnificent city. The air was cool, carrying the faint hum of energy emanating from the crystalline structures below. For a moment, neither spoke, content to simply exist in each other's presence. "You're leaving soon, aren't you?" Lizara asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft, but carried an edge of vulnerability that made Elias's heart ache. He turned to look at her, surprised by the question. "We'll have to eventually," he admitted cautiously. "Our mission isn't over yet." Lizara nodded slowly, though her expression remained unreadable. She wrapped her arms around herself as if warding off a chill. "And what happens when you leave? Will you forget about me? And this place?" Elias hesitated, unsure how to respond. He wanted to reassure her, but the truth was complicated. Humanity's first interstellar expedition came with obligations to Earth, to science, to progress. Staying behind wasn't part of the plan. But as he gazed into Lizara's violet eyes, filled with equal parts hope and fear, he felt the weight of her question settle heavily on his shoulders. "I won't forget," he said finally, his voice firm despite the turmoil inside him. "How could I? You've shown me things no human has ever seen before." But Lizara shook her head, her shimmering hair catching the fading sunlight. "That's not what I asked." She took a step closer, her gaze piercing through him. Will you leave me human? Truly abandon me here after everything we shared? Her words hung in the air like a challenge, forcing Elias to confront emotions he'd been trying to suppress. He cared for her. That much was undeniable. But caring didn't make decisions easier. Leaving meant fulfilling his duty to Earth. Staying meant risking everything for someone who wasn't even human. And yet, the thought of walking away from Lizera left an emptiness in his chest he couldn't ignore. I don't know, he admitted quietly, lowering his gaze. I want to help you rebuild your world, but my people, they need me too. For a long moment, Lizera said nothing. Then, she reached out and placed a hand on his arm, a gesture both gentle and unfamiliar. You humans are strange, she murmured. You carry so many burdens, yet you still find ways to care for others. Her touch sent a shiver down his spine, grounding him in the reality of their impossible situation. He wanted to promise her he wouldn't leave, but promises were dangerous when you couldn't guarantee keeping them. Back at the campsite, tensions continued to simmer. Lieutenant Maravos watched Elias return from his time with Lizera, her jaw tightening with barely concealed frustration. He's losing focus, she muttered to Dr. Cruz. We didn't come all this way just for him to get distracted by some alien princess. Dr. Cruz sighed, rubbing her temples. Maybe it's not distraction, she suggested tentatively. Maybe it's something deeper, something none of us can understand. As the night wore on, Elias lay awake in his tent, staring up at the unfamiliar constellations above. Lizera's question echoed in his mind. Will you leave me, human? No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the feeling that his answer would change everything, for better or worse. Little did he know, the choice might soon be taken out of his hands entirely. The battlefield erupted into chaos as Cal Vorthan's forces descended upon the ruins, their warships unleashing a barrage of energy blasts that shook the very ground beneath the humans' feet. Captain Elias Drake stood at the heart of the conflict, his mind racing with adrenaline and resolve. Behind him, Lizera clutched the Lumina fragment tightly, its radiant glow pulsing in sync with her labored breathing. Her strength was fading, but her determination burned brighter than ever. Now, Elias shouted over the deafening roar of explosions. With a final surge of effort, he and Lizera channeled the Lumina core's power outward, creating a shimmering barrier that deflected incoming attacks. The crew outside took advantage of the momentary reprieve, launching counterattacks with everything they had: plasma cannons firing, makeshift explosives detonating, and energy traps disabling enemy drones. Lieutenant Maravos manned one of the plasma turrets, her guilt driving her to fight harder than she ever had before. Each blast from her weapon brought a fleeting sense of redemption, though she knew it would take far more than this battle to earn back the trust she'd betrayed. Nearby, Dr. Lena Cruz worked tirelessly to keep the defenses operational, patching up damaged equipment while dodging falling debris. Despite their efforts, the odds remained grim. Vorthan's fleet was vast, and his soldiers relentless. From the cockpit of his flagship, the warlord himself watched the skirmish unfold, his cruel grin visible even through the haze of smoke and fire. Pathetic, he sneered, his voice crackling over the comms. Do you really think your feeble resistance will stop me? Hand over the princess, and I might let some of you live. Elias heard the transmission and gritted his teeth. Turning to Lizera, who leaned heavily against him for support, he whispered, We can't hold out much longer. Are you ready? She nodded weakly, her violet eyes filled with both fear and resolve. I am. Trust me, Elias. Together, they focused all their energy on amplifying the Lumina fragment's power. The crystal began to hum louder, its light growing blindingly bright. Outside, the crew noticed the change and scrambled to shield themselves as waves of pure energy radiated outward, disabling entire squadrons of enemy ships. Even Vorthan's flagship shuddered under the assault, its systems failing one by one. But the strain was taking its toll. Lizera collapsed to her knees, her body flickering like a dying star. Elias caught her, panic rising in his chest. "Lizera, no, stay with me." "It's working," she gasped, forcing a faint smile. "Finish it, for both our worlds." Summoning every ounce of strength, Elias poured his own energy into the fragment, merging his will with Lizera's. The combined force unleashed a massive pulse of energy that rippled across the planet, obliterating Vorthan's remaining forces. The warlord's flagship exploded in a brilliant flash, silencing his threats forever. As the dust settled, an eerie silence fell over the battlefield. The crew emerged cautiously from their positions, battered but alive. Inside the chamber, Elias cradled Lizera in his arms, her breathing shallow but steady. "You did it," he murmured, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. "You saved us all." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Not alone," she whispered. "You were here, with me." Though victorious, the cost of the battle weighed heavily on everyone. The ruins were scared, the landscape marred by destruction. Yet amidst the devastation, there was hope, a fragile chance to rebuild and forge a new future together. As Elias carried Lizera out of the chamber, the crew gathered around them, their faces etched with exhaustion, but also gratitude. For the first time since arriving on this alien world, they felt united, not just as humans, but as allies bound by shared sacrifice. But the hardest question still loomed. What came next?